Jumping right into this one this time today, Gen Z Can't Handle Adulthood by Brett Cooper.
So according to a recent survey, a whopping 77% of Gen Zers have admitted to bringing their parents to a job interview. This is 100% a symptom of a full-blown generational crisis, and we need to talk about it because Gen Z is cooked.
Gen Z is so totally cooked and cucked. And as a member of Gen Z, yeah, most of us are screwed. Most of us, you can't do anything except go online and complain about things. I'm curious to see where we're going to be as a generation in 15 to 20 years. How many of us make it that far. Because there's a significant portion that just acts so depressed and so victim-y that it's like, are you going to live to that point? Like, I hope that's not that old in our lives. For the younger group, that's like early 30s. For the older of us, that'll be entering our 40s. It's like, yeah. And most of the older ones of us, I know we are able to handle adulthood.
Now, in my opinion, my generation's dependency on our parents, our insecurity, our instability,
and bringing your parents to a job interview should immediately not get you that job. If I ever have a business one day and you bring your mommy or daddy to your interview, you're not getting hired. In fact, I'm going to call you into the back, sit you down, and ask you if you're the one who brought them or they brought you and are having the problem disconnecting, because that's not normal.
Is a psychological shift that we are seeing primarily as a result of social media and the higher education system. I'm going to tell you all about that, but before we do, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that.
You guys should do that here too. Like, subscribe while you're down there, maybe even leave a comment and say hello. Can maybe even run over to Brett's video and congratulate her on her new baby boy. That's, at this point, I think like a month old. I think that's what that math would add up to. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a crazy month.
Notification bell if you want to stay up to date on all.
We definitely cannot wait for Brett to be out of her maternity leave and to be back to her normal every week episodes. These maternity week episodes, though, have been nice and fun to have come out.
All of our videos and hear about more chaos like this. So before we get into that 77% and the other survey that we need to talk about today, I want to start on another trend. So a different study, another recent study on personality traits, shows another terrifying trend that has occurred over the last 15 years. As time spent online and social media has gone up, especially for young people like me, key traits like conscientiousness, agreeableness, and extroversion have absolutely plummeted for my generation. While neuroticism, meaning anxiety, worry, and fear, is unsurprisingly skyrocketing. Take a look at these graphs. There is no debating this in the
young adults' personalities are changing with conscientiousness in free fall. Woo! That is a massive we. Neuroticism is in a rise. Agreeableness is way down, but I think that's just part of the youth not wanting to go along with the older groups, and we want to be different than the other ones. We're trying to do things our way. Stop it. Stop it. I'm Gen Z and I don't like being associated with so many terrible individuals. We need to turn our generation around, and I hope we can do it quickly. These graphs need to turn back the other way.
The slightest. And yes, in case you are wondering, our lovely generation is in fact represented by that red line, which shows the most staggering results of all. Now, I wanted to start with that and show you guys that graph because obviously Gen Z has problems. We have talked about this at length, ad nauseum. We have talked about the mental health crisis, all of that. This is just another example of that. This is just another example of how we are essentially psychologically wired for anxiety. And that is now showing up in every other part of our life, especially in the workforce. And we're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to say the point of this episode and the other episodes that I do about Gen Z and my generation, it's not supposed to attack Gen Z. I actually just want to spread awareness.
You can say it's not meant to attack them, but some of them are going to feel attacked. It's just what they do, sadly.
And shed light on all of these problems, because all of us are feeling them. We feel them in ourselves. We feel them in our friends. We see the manifestations of these issues in our culture, in our society. And I think if we can shed a light on it and get to the root cause of a lot of these issues, then we can hopefully change for the better. Whether that means pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, trying to make things better for our friends, or at least, at the very least, making things better for the next generation, then that is a net positive. And so that is why I do episodes just like this. Because if I can at least shed a light on how an entire generation was systemically failed by social media and a predatory university system and a culture that crippled their independence, then maybe, just maybe, we can stop it from ever happening again. But before we keep going, I want to thank today's sponsor. All right, guys, Last makes you better. All right, so now we can officially get into it. That 77% statistic that I mentioned at the top of the episode, guys, that is just the tip of the iceberg. 77% of these respondents brought their parents to a job interview. Now,
that number is so insane. When I heard that people in Gen Z were bringing a parent to a job interview, I expected that to be out of the ordinary, a one-off here, there, maybe at most like 10 to 15%, and that was embarrassing. But knowing it's at 77% is just an insane statistic. That fact is crazy to hear, and it makes me extremely worried for Gen Z and later on when it's time for them to get jobs, Gen Alpha, when they're, the iPad kids have to get out into the workforce. Like, we already had I believe it was Spirit Airlines plane that got near Air Force One's airspace, and basically the Air Force One or the air traffic control tower was telling Spirit pilot, hey, you need to move. Hey, you need to move. Hey, get off the iPad. And he's like literally yelling that over to the Spirit Airlines pilot because he's not listening at all. And he's definitely distracted by something. It's like, come on, man. You're flying a damn plane. You got lives at risk. Come on. Do your job. And people, don't bring your parents to a job interview. Don't do it.
To be fair, that statistic does require some more context, because that 77% does include parents who were driving their children to interviews. And that could be a 15-year-old Gen Zer trying to go get a job at McDonald's, or on the other end of the spectrum, it could be a 25-year-old that still lives at home and needs mommy and daddy to take them to their job interviews. And a lot of people on social media...
And that is fair as well. However, I don't think you should be including yourself in the statistic if all your parents did was drive you to the interview. Because, if it is your first job at McDonald's, you probably don't have a car yet. You're probably gonna be reliant on others for rides for a teeny bit while you save your money up and get yourself some wheels.
As this was going viral, they were using that fact to blow off the survey and say, none of this is real, none of this is relevant, the problems aren't that bad, they are not that severe. But the fact of the matter is, it kind of is that bad, because the other information that was brought out in this report does not help their case at all. It actually just makes Gen Z look even worse, because that same survey found that in addition to the 77%, 53% of respondents said that their parent had spoken with a hiring manager on their behalf. That is...
What? The only time I've ever had a parent talk to one of my bosses is when, I've worked a service job and they've popped into said place and gotten service. Like, if it was at a store, they come in and I'm stocking shelves or whatnot, and they see me, or I'm working fast food and they came up and got food at the register from me. It's like, that might be my boss was around at the time and they got to meet them out of convenience that they were there. And I said, hey, this is ex-parent, my dad, my mom. You can meet them real fast. And I've actually had a couple bosses who've had some pretty funny, just little introductions with my parents. It's quite nice to see a little bit of humanity from your boss sometimes.
It's far worse than driving.
But I'm not directly asking my parents to help me get said job. I'm not asking them to do anything for the job. In fact, the better way is if your parents aren't, your family is in work, are not tied. leave them untied unless you're joining a family business. Then in that case, ignore that rule.
Their child to a job interview. They went on and they said the dependence persists when young people enter the workforce. So after they have gotten the job, because their parents have either gone with them or driven them and have spoken to the hiring manager after the fact, 73% of respondents said that they have had their parents help complete work assignments, and 45% reported regularly having a parent talk to their current manager. But guys, I can't even comprehend a situation. Like, I'm thinking back on my time at Daily Wire in like a corporate environment, or when I was working at Young Americans for Liberty. I cannot even think of a time.
Even Trader Joe's, when she was there at her first job, when she was in college too, it's like, I don't even think there she could have had spots
when it would have been appropriate for my mom to talk to anybody there. Not even.
Unless her mom was literally shopping at that Trader Joe's at the time she was working, and her boss happened to be the person out in the back store stocking something, and her mom say, "Hey, I need your help with something." That's like the only case scenario I can come up with, and that's even freaking reaching.
Even appropriate, but where that would even come into play. Like, there is no reason or way that would have even transpired. Like, she didn't even know who I was working with. She would not have even been able to find out how to contact them. And yet 45% say that their parents are regularly talking to their managers. Like, these stats are insane. Again, I think that is worse than the 77% that are getting driven by their parents. Like, even at 15 years old, I don't think that my mom ever spoke to my manager at Trader Joe's as a.
To be fair, Brett, you weren't in the group of kids who had normal childhoods. You were a very, I don't say privileged kid. I say a kid who was allowed to do what she wanted, really, within the bounds of what her parents allowed. I mean, I don't know any other kids who really got as much freedom as she did to go out and go travel and be in, like, on Broadway and in movie projects and on TV shows and whatnot in Hollywood. It's like, I don't know how many sets of parents would just get up and move across country for their kid and their kid's potential dreams. It's like, in her case, yes, it worked out, but for every Brett Cooper, there's a dozen people you didn't know their name.
Child actor when I was like 8 years old. Obviously, my mom was in the room, she was with me, but I was the one speaking directly to my agents and my managers and the producers and the directors that I would work with. And that type of job is an anomaly. Like, most people are not on set with their parents, which is legally mandated by the Actors Union, by SAG, so she had to be there. But that type of job is not the case for most Gen Z. Like, most Gen Zers were not on film sets with adults at 8 years old. We're talking about part-time jobs after school, or jobs while you're in college or right out of college. These are the jobs that we're dealing with in this survey. And parents are heavily involved. So genuinely, contrary to what commenters were saying on X, I do not see a single way to excuse this. Like, genuinely, how is this happening? Is Gen Z just that much in trouble? Now, this Yahoo Finance headline really said it all. They summed up a lot of this. They said Gen Z really are the hardest to work with. Even managers of their own generation say that they're difficult. Instead, bosses plan to hire more of their millennial counterparts. Guys, what Yahoo was saying in this article is the Gen Zers themselves are even admitting to struggling with things like professionalism.
As basically one of the oldest Gen Z, at one point, I was labeled millennial, and then they changed the shift dates around, and my birth month got shifted around to becoming Gen Z. So I'm like the oldest Gen Z. I've worked with the younger crew. Some of them, it's like they pulled up to work in their car, and then they took their brain out and sat in the passenger seat, and then came into work. It's like none of them are thinking, and some of them can't read very well. Like, I would love it if some of them would just have the ability to understand and do their jobs properly. But I've had so many employees that I've worked with, coworkers, that I would go up to my boss and I'd be like, it's the last straw here. I can't go on with these guys. Like, story time. I worked with this one kid when back at McDonald's. We'll call him Bob. So I was working one day with Bob, and Bob, he's just this snot-nosed kid who thinks his shit don't stink. He comes up, and at the time, he's just a person in the kitchen. He's just working the grill. He's putting the burgers down. But he could barely manage that because he would be still be, I would have, me and other individuals definitely taught him how to do his job properly. Yet, he would still consistently improperly do it. And then, which is fine, you just retrain, you try again. And if after a certain amount of times of trying and trying again, it doesn't work, then you go to your boss and you be like, hey, he's not working out. It may be time to cut him loose. Because at that point, no, he was not out of his 90-day probationary period, so we could get rid of him. And that wasn't my last straw, though. I'm like, okay, I can work with a slow employee. I can work with someone who needs a little extra. Hey, I've got to say these things again and again and again to you. But it's like, okay, I can deal with someone like that. But what the straw that broke the camel's back was the day, it was like a series of a couple terrible days that I don't know if he was having or he was just being a shithead kid, because Bobby came out. He came out at one point, and I'm doing my job. I'm standing there. We just finished a rush, and I'm tired out. I'm gonna go get a quick drink, and I was leaning around. I wasn't cleaning. I had time to lean instead, and him during that. I don't remember the interaction that led up to it, but it was like me saying hello or something, and then him just going, unalive yourself, but with the actual words. And I'm just like, okay, that's an inappropriate phrase to just be tossing around at work, regardless of the friendships you may have with anybody else around here. We didn't have that relationship. But even that wasn't the exact note. It was the day after that. I had left that in a note with my boss as just a, hey, this happened. I'm not wanting him fired for it, but just informing you. The next day, though, the thing he did that made me go up to my boss and say, either I'm leaving or he's leaving, was when he was, I guess, in the walk-in fridge, and he got an egg out of one of the cartons, and he took that egg and he hucked it right at the freezer wall, where it, of course, cracked and started dripping down and froze that way. I don't know if he just wanted to see what would happen, or I don't know what was going through his head. But it was that point where I'm just like, I saw it, the aftermath, knowing that he was the only one that could have been in there, because he had been the one I'd been sending back there to get stuff. So at that point, I was just like, I can't work with this anymore. But yeah, it's a big problem with Gen Z. They don't work well. They are very, very immature overall. Excuse me. But yeah, overall, Gen Z is just super immature. And COVID did nothing to help.
Some motivation and communication skills. They're saying, yeah, we're not that great at that. We have no idea what we're doing. Mommy and daddy do some of our work. They talk to our managers. We can't handle it. And even Gen Z managers who are working at these companies are saying, yeah, we cannot deal with this anymore. We are going to hire millennials instead. Like, nobody wants to work with us. Later in the article, they said, it's no secret that Gen Z often gets flack for, in the words of the Sister Act star Whoopi Goldberg, not busting their behinds at work quite like the previous generations did. And I feel like I don't even need to go into any more depth on that point. Like, we have talked about this at length. We have talked about Gen Z not being able to have, small talk in break rooms, not knowing how to communicate with people in the workplace. We have talked about, I've told the story a million times now, about taking that interpersonal communications class in school and being told that HR departments are preparing to welcome my generation because we are so anxiety ridden. We are so different than other generations, and companies have no idea.
If a company has to change how they hire to be able to hire the new generation, that company is setting themselves up for future issues. It's like that is the equivalent of changing your hiring practices with DEI initiatives and requiring a certain amount of people from this gender, this race, this group. I need a certain amount of this, and that. just so we look diverse. It's like, yeah, but also we need to hire people that can actually do the job and can get along in the work environment and not shut down immediately when someone comes up and tries to speak to them.
Idea how they're going to have to deal with us. And we have talked about that so much. But even knowing all of that, never in my wildest dreams did I assume that this would be manifested in, or that this would result in parents having to step in and do their children's work for them, or speak to hiring managers or current managers on their behalf. Like, that is even lower than I thought possible. But unfortunately for all of us, the problems do not stop there, because not only is my generation psychologically wired for anxiety and incapable of handling basic workplace obligations and interactions, but we are also the product of one of the world's biggest scams that is leaving us thousands of dollars in debt before we even get a job. A scam that probably gave us more anxiety and dread instead of real preparation for the real world.
And that's a fake college system.
That would have mitigated all of these problems, even as we deal with the results of social media. We'll dive back in, but first, a quick word from being hard that they know we sent you on over. Now, you guys probably caught on the moment that I said thousands of dollars in debt, but obviously we are talking about the university system and the student loan crisis. And one thing that I want to say is that I think a lot of Republicans kind of revel in this crisis, because we often see it, on the other side of the aisle, and we see these, lesbian dance theory PhDs not being able to get a job, and we laugh and we jeer and we point fingers. But this happened to young Republicans as well. This happened to...
It did. It happened to everybody across the entire political spectrum, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, moderate. It happened across the whole way. Everybody got hit. However, in today's day and age, it is the information age. So when going out and, all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're going to go into debt to pay for this degree you're going to get, and then you're going to be able to pay off the student loans over the course of the time after you get that degree. Then all you have to do is go do the math. If you take the cost of the degree, and then you go look at how much it's going to cost to pay it off, and you look at the amount of interest, because you looked at the amount of interest it'll have. Usually if it's a federal loan, it'll have a decently low rate that you'll just pay off minimum monthly for 10 years, and hopefully after that you're done. You don't want to get on the other kind of payment plans that'll pay lower amounts of payment than the interest that accrues, and then you're just building a mountain out of your debt that will never be able to be conquered, because I've seen some people totally do that. But yeah, with it being the information age where you can look up anything, and you could ask ChatGPT. You could literally take a picture of the paper and go, hey, can you look over this and simplify it down to a couple sentences for me with the important information? And it could probably give that to you. It could probably take the full page of information, pop it down into about a paragraph worth, giving you the amount of money you're borrowing, the interest rate you're borrowing at, the payment plan estimate for the future, and the, let's see, the amount, the interest, the payment plan for the future, and the total, length of time and everything you'll do there. And maybe if you get a couple other options for loans, you can have a comparison tool to stick them up side by side. There's got to be some way to just sit there, search, put the information in easily, and you can look up anything. So that whole argument of, oh, we've been tricked into going into thousands and thousands of dollars of debt, I don't agree with, because I literally watched it happen to some, and I watched others go into their college. They went to community college, they spent only a few thousand, and then they went off to their university where they only spent a couple years there, and then they had their bachelor's degree, they went off and they started good careers. I know a handful of people who did that. They're great, they're pretty well off now. Do they have a bit of debt? Yeah. Are they working to pay it down? Of course. Are they doing it in a smart manner? I hope so. They're people I know, but they're not like people I'm talking to on an every single daily basis. But it's good to see it.
young kids who were not trying to go into a ton of debt to become lesbian dance theorists or whatever the insane degree is that we want to laugh at today. They were just doing what society told them they should do, that was going to bring them success and set them up for the real world. And I don't think we should laugh at the plight of any of these young kids that are now crippled under this incredibly exploitive system. And that is what I want to touch on here. Now, I don't know why all of this popped up on my X feed right now, but I have been seeing.
And the other thing about the millennials who already had their student loans sitting off to the side as they were paying them down, and then COVID happened and dropped the rates to, the interest rates, payments, and everything to zero. Oh, to the people who just stopped paying because they weren't required to, you guys are a bunch of idiots. The amount of money you could have saved in interest alone would have been worth it in the end, just to keep paying early, pay off without the interest accruing and without it, just watching your balance go, whee!
A huge debate over the last couple of weeks as a bunch of videos from young people and Gen Zers have been popping up online about who, if anyone, should bail out my generation and help end this crisis. Because
no generation should get any student loan bailout. The country's in deep enough debt as it is, where I don't know if it's going to ever be able to be dug out of. And digging us deeper isn't a solution. So no bailouts. In fact, I'm in big favor of, if you borrowed the money, you should pay it back 100%. To every bit of person's debt.
Obviously, something has to be done. Now, taxpayers, clearly, that is not the solution. We should not be on the hook for other people's poor decisions. Even if I empathize with them and sympathize and say, I wish that this never happened, I know that you were led astray, that is still not my job to bail you out. Forgiving student loans, that sounds like a beautiful, simple, glorious thing, like free healthcare, everything's free, money just grows on trees. That's not how it works. That is on the back of taxpayers. That should not be done. That is not the solution, especially not through taxpayer and government assistance.
If you really want to fight someone about your student loans, go fight the schools. Fight the schools who chose to set the prices at such an exorbitant amount because they knew the government would just loan out these exorbitantly high loans where it's like, oh, we have unlimited borrowing, so our prices at this college are unlimited.
Because you and I, did not cause the problem. The real villains here, in my opinion, are the predatory colleges that took advantage of this system in the first place. They took advantage of both the students.
Not pre-watched. We just both have the same mind.
Students and the loan system, and Robbie Starbuck pointed it out in this tweet. Now, he is quote tweeting one of the many videos that has been circulating around of young people crying about their debt, crying about not being able to get their feet under them and get a job. And Robbie said, let's really be honest. A lot of these college loans were absolutely predatory, and the kids had no idea what they were signing up for. Many of them have worthless degrees now. This is a real problem. A bank really should only give loans for degrees with real earning power. And I completely agree. And I know a lot of people will say, well, their parents should have told them better, or they should know better, but
no, they had Google. I don't think their parents should be the ones to blame for them. Their parents should have, if they were involved in their child's life, they should have had an input. But I'm not saying the parents should be solely responsible or the schools should be solely responsible for not doing it. Their kid should be able to go to that degree, Google how much does X degree make per year on average. And then you take that number, and I would say you subtract a little bit from it to keep yourself in the cushion in case you don't meet the close enough to that bottom end or that average part. It's like, come on, it's a very simple thing to do. Any high schooler should know how to do that.
Think about your high school experience. Just the normal conventional high school experience going through the public school system. They did not teach young Americans about loans. A lot of these parents might not have known any better. It basically just sounds like free money when you're 18 years old. $250,000 doesn't seem like that much money because, in a couple of years, after I get this amazing degree, I'm going to make six figures immediately and I'm going to pay it all back and everything's great. That's totally fine. I don't need to think about interest or anything.
That was the lie that was so perpetrated by everywhere, where it was like, oh, go to college if you want to make any money in life. And now, all of a sudden, you look at it and you see all the college students or the people who went to college and have graduated, and they have a mountain of debt and a degree that they're not using. And then you look over at the other group, the group you should have picked, that's the trades, and they're all, sitting with no debt or very little or debt for their tools. Because I know some of them have tool debt that they literally have to go into because it's just how that industry has worked. So you got your tool debt people, but that debt's a lot lower of a number than student loans.
Anything like that, I'm not going to have any worries because everybody told me this is exactly what I need to do in order to be successful. Nobody was realistic with them. Nobody told them what that actually looks like in 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years. Especially if they can't get the job that society and the culture is promising them they will get once they graduate. So I completely agree with everything Robbie is saying here. Now, the other thing that I agree on is that yes, these loans were predatory, but the colleges were even more predatory with how they exploited the system at the expense of the students that they were supposed to be protecting and preparing for the real world. For example, this is just kind of how it all started in my mind, but the government created programs like Government Plus loans. So these are loans that are subsidized by the government, and they are for graduate schools. And they are limitless. And what that means is that once you have graduated, you've gotten your bachelor's, if you want to go to grad school, if you want to do the lesbian dance theory master's degree, if you want to go to law school, if you want to get your PhD, the government will fund whatever it takes. However much that degree is, however much your law school is, there is no limit, there is no cap on what you can borrow from the government. Those are subsidized, limitless loans. Now, obviously, this just makes sense. It's like a math equation. Universities saw this and they realized that they could charge whatever they wanted for tuition because people would have somebody to fund it. But thanks to programs like...
Thanks to guaranteed government subsidized loans, you got colleges that are like, oh, we used to charge $5,000 a semester. Let's charge $50,000 for the whole 4 years now. But sir, that's more than double the cost. Shut up, we're making money.
This, they did not have to operate within the supply and demand system anymore. They could charge whatever they wanted. They could create meaningless degrees and expand their programs and have as many students as they wanted because they didn't actually need the students to be able to pay for these programs themselves or have them be profitable once they went out into the workforce because somebody else was always going to be footing the bill. And so they just kept expanding. They just kept increasing the tuition. And that is why, for example, every university and its mother has a law school now. That's why there are programs like the lesbian dance theory master's degree, because it does not matter to them if those programs actually translate into real life jobs or money. It doesn't matter to them.
I was watching an episode of Financial Audit and this girl had a degree in the only thing I could think of her to use that degree was to go back and teach that subject again. For those wondering, it was a degree in Chicano studies because she wanted to learn about her heritage and history when she could have done a Google search.
We have too many lawyers and not enough legal jobs. It doesn't matter that for a lot of these students, they will go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and only make $50,000 a year as a lawyer and never be able to pay that back. They do not care because they got the tuition check, they cashed it, and they can move on. And thanks to the government and the lenders for creating the system in the first place, they were able to just make money and never face consequences. And to his credit, I think that this is an incredible thing that Trump is doing. This is some of the rot that President Trump is talking about ending in his big, beautiful bill. You can see it here in this tweet that we have up on the screen, but Trump wants to end these limitless subsidized loans that allow colleges to rip off students because he knows that it is only increasing our debt and that it is only hurting students. And
Oops, back up. I wanted to see that chart a little more. Big, beautiful bill. No more parent-subsidized loans. Loans subsidized by government for grad school. Okay. That's kind of fair. If you're going to be going to grad school, you better know that your job is going to make you money, so you better know how you can cash flow and pay your loan back yourself. Student loan borrowing capped for life at, over $250,000. Yeah, that tracks. Anything else here necessary? No.
Students. And of course, even though this will only help students in the long run and will rein in universities, people online are incredibly upset about this because, in my opinion, they do not understand the root cause of the issue and because probably they just have Trump derangement syndrome. But one of these people
The Trump derangement syndrome is too freaking real as of late. So many people are absolutely too insane. The people who were taking Tylenol, mass amounts of it, where they had one overdose, that had one death.
Said Trump's big beautiful bill caps the amount of money law students can borrow at $50,000 a year. That doesn't even cover tuition at many law schools, let alone the cost of living. This is devastating. Okay? That's not Trump's fault. That is not his fault in the slightest. That is the fault of the universities. The colleges are the ones with the power to end these programs
say it, but
and
I figured
end the
she
insane
would.
tuition bloat that only they benefit from. Insane tuition that genuinely does not make sense even when you add in inflation. Like, what Trump is doing is objectively a good thing. It is going to force schools to have to think about supply and demand. It is going to force them to have to kind of work within a framework of capitalism instead of...
Imagine that, forcing schools to have to follow a budget and stick to it. And not just say, hey, government, we're gonna make sure you have to write us checks for more and more money each year over year.
Just believing that money grows on trees and that students will just be able to pay whatever they want. It will force colleges to rein everything in, lower tuition so that students can actually afford it, and so that they are only getting degrees that will make them money in the long run. And hopefully with Trump trying to end this rot, going hand in hand with people...
I think student loans should be capped at 6 figures. As soon as it hits $100,000, if you've borrowed that, you shouldn't be able to get any more. Because I don't think even for the advanced degrees that are different levels of doctor or lawyer, even with those two, I don't think they should cost more than $100,000 for those careers. Because even in your best bet, those careers are not going to bring you out right in your first year making 6 figures. It'll take you a couple of years to get to that point. You probably will, but it won't be right off the bat. That's almost 0% chance of it happening right off the bat.
Really thinking critically about college and whether it's even necessary can start to change some of this, at least for the next generation. Because I think another lie that Gen Z was obviously told is that you have to go to college, that you have to be part of this predatory system, that you have to pay the insane tuition cost because it's the only way that you're going to be successful. Okay, well...
Even in my high school, they preached going to college so heavily, but I had such a rough senior year, I was like, I need some time out of school. I'm going to fail college and flunk out if I try to go right now. So I took the gap. I just decided I'll join the workforce and get a job. And I'm still quite content with that choice. I am very happy that I don't have, $50,000 of student loan debt weighing me down and sitting behind me that even if I went bankrupt, I couldn't get rid of. Like, that's the bigger part of it. It's like, even through bankruptcy, the only winning against student loans is death. Like, the only way out of your student loans is dying.
Well, after years of this, we know that that's not the case. You don't have to. Or you can at least do something that is not traditional. I'm not saying that you don't need to go get a higher education, but there are other ways. You can go to a community college and then transfer to a university later if you want. That's what I did. You can go through a certificate program. You can take a couple gap years and actually figure out...
If the government really wanted to crack down on the amount of student loans that could be borrowed, they would make it so universities are only, 2-year for the move from associates to bachelor, and then a community college will be just community colleges are all 2-year associates, and then after that, and only after you've gone and done a cheap community college associate's degree, then you can move to a university and go for your full 4-year with a bachelor and beyond if you want. You only need 2 more to get your bachelor, but you could go beyond if you wanted to. No one's stopping you. There will be a certain amount you'll have to stop borrowing, so you'll have to learn how to save money and pay for your schooling or cash flow each semester to semester. But that's a different, problem for a different day.
What you want to do with your life and decide whether this is actually the right path for you. You can go to trade schools. That's an incredible, incredible opportunity, especially for
trades
the young men
fantastic.
Who are watching.
Mike Rowe, he has preached going into trades very heavily with his dirty jobs and his new podcast, or his not new podcast, but his podcast that he has where he talks about all of that.
out there. Because genuinely, and I know you guys hear
Gets
this a
people
lot,
from
but
all around.
unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, for a lot of people, there really
Engineer, that's the third one I keep forgetting to include when I say doctor, lawyer.
isn't a direct need for a degree, and yet we have convinced my entire generation that it is the only way to secure your future. But based on the jobless, crying, and in-debt Gen Zers that I have been seeing all over my TikTok and my X feed for the last 3 weeks, obviously that is not the truth, and obviously something needs to change. And to be
Gen Z also had the group of people that call themselves NEETs, or not in education, employment, or training. So they're literally just staying at home in their parents' basement doing absolutely nothing. They aren't even attempting to be good members of society, even by going and flipping burgers at their local McD's. Like, there's nothing that some of these Gen Zers have hope for. And I do think that give it 20 years to maybe even 30 or 40 when Gen Z starts sadly, and it will be sad and tragic, losing our parents, that there will be a lot of homeless Gen Z people. I think there will be a lot of homeless Gen Z who might hope and pray that they have older siblings who will just kindly take them in. But I don't think any of them should. I think if they want to get out of their own slump, they need to learn to do it themselves.
Be honest, who would want to pay for schools that spit out students just like this girl?
Excuse my language, but to that I say fuck ICE and fuck the Trump administration.
Yeah, I wouldn't want this at my school. I wouldn't want it either side of the political aisle. When you're making a speech at the end, keep politics out of it. Every time. Otherwise, you're going to polarize half the audience against you. And if you look at it, the girl in the background, she's frowning. She's not having this.
I can't with the friggin' drama and the swelling music behind her. Okay, I have to say, this is so embarrassing. That's UCLA. That's my alma mater. That was the commencement address this past year in 2025, and this girl ended her college career by saying F Trump and F ICE. Like, this literally feels like an SNL skit. The crying, oh my God, I'm doing something so brave. This is so
She definitely was a part of the drama club, and I'm not talking about Brett.
amazing. Oh my God, just like, give it a break. Like, really, it really is how you want to end your college career? That tells us so much more about what college taught you versus what is going on in the world right now. And these are the types of students that colleges are spitting out. Students who are emotionally fraught and anxiety-ridden over politics instead of being empowered and ready to take on the adult world with real-life experience and preparation and genuine excitement. Instead, she is ending her college career like this. And the thing that stood out to me even more than her face and the swelling music and the drama and what she was saying was the smug, smiling professors in the background. If you didn't catch that, I'm going to put that clip right back up here. You need to see both of those professors smiling and clapping as she politicizes her commencement address. They are getting rich off of this system. They are getting rich off of feeding these students lies. They take hundreds of thousands of dollars from students every single year. They teach them nothing of value about the real world. They do not set them up to be able to get jobs. They don't even set them up to be able to go to a job interview by themselves and interact with their managers on their own. They instead fill their heads with anxiety and entitled victim-driven ideologies that make them unemployable and impossible to work with. That and our social media addicted world is what has created this entire problem. I mean, really, let's just put it all.
Yeah, the social media addiction is a heavy one for a bunch of Gen Zers. I've met so many people who I've either worked with or had the pleasure of interacting with in my day-to-day life where, yeah, some of these Gen Zers just need to get the fuck off their phones. And that's coming from someone who, is ready for Neuralink and plug me into the Matrix,
Together. You have a generation that is psychologically damaged by social media, that has no attention span, that is unable to cope with their own problems.
I hate how effective the Shorts formula is at stealing my attention span and free time. I am ADHD, and that shit is like cocaine. It is bad. I have spent nights after work sitting in my chair here at my computer, and I'll just sit there and I'll be on YouTube Shorts hitting my down arrow key going 1 by one, by one, by one, or scrolling on my mouse wheel down on the shorts to get it and reading the comments. And I'll go and I'll sit there and do it for like an hour to 2 hours some nights. And I'll look over at the clock and I'll be like, what the hell happened to the time? And yeah, some of that scares me with how effective my time is taken by shorts. That's why anytime on my personal YouTube channel feed I come across shorts, I click show me fewer of them. I'm like, I don't want to see them because my ADHD ass brain sees an interesting short thumbnail and it has to click it because it's got to know what's going on.
They are then funneled into a university system that financially cripples them while teaching them victimhood ideology instead of skills. And the end result is a generation that can't even handle a job interview without their mom and believes that their feelings are a substitute for reality. That is what we are dealing with Gen Z. That is what my peers are living in every single day. So for lack of a better phrase,
I hate having to be in Gen Z and calling them my peers. I might be jinxing it, but at this point, I'd almost want to be associated more with Gen Alpha. And they were born on an iPad.
Gen Z is not just struggling, they are cooked. Literally, like their brains are fried and they were set up to fail. And obviously, at the end of the day, everybody is responsible for their own actions. Everybody has a responsibility to make their lives better, but I will always say that Gen Z was dealt a very specific set of cards that was unprecedented, that our parents were not prepared for, that our guidance counselors, that our teachers were not prepared for, and we are seeing the outcomes. So where do we go from here? Well, first of all, I think what Trump is doing is great. I think that we do need to hold the universities accountable. I think we need to end the government-backed limitless student loan so that we can hold them accountable. That is a first step to forcing the universities to have any kind of skin in the game again. But all of that, of course, is a more systemic and institutional issue that is going to take years to cure, in my opinion. And so what do we do as individuals? My message to my peers would be that the only way out is to reject the world that was built for us, that we were born into. And I am genuinely so sorry that so much of my generation was led into crippling debt and into these insane programs without...
Yeah, we were all led astray. We were all led poorly by people who were also led poorly. Some of our parents' generation are the older millennials or the very tail end of the previous one. And it's like, yeah, those older millennials, some of them, they're at the age where they're getting ready to, closer, not quite there, but getting ready to hit the retirement age if they're the older group of them. And it's like, wow, did you guys really lie to us and tell us that we had to go do all this? And I'm at the point wondering, did they tell us we all had to go to college in hopes that they knew it would indoctrinate us into a leftist ideology and create potential immense amounts of people supporting Democrats throughout their entire lives just because they were brainwashed to do so during college and the formative years of their life, really? Where they're learning the most and actually trying to make something of their life instead of just being another number sitting in a classroom as a child. Because that's really what American schools kind of feel like sometimes.
Fully understanding what that meant and what it meant for your future. And I do think that we need to find a solution that is fair for everyone and at least protects the next generation. But for now, at least, what you can control is how you respond to the situation and what you do next. So take care of yourself, please, for the love of God. Log off and touch grass and focus on solutions, things that you can do in your young adult life.
Yeah, the phone addictions and everything with Gen Z is pretty bad. And the getting outside is a less common activity that I really wish and hope that more of us can get outside and do more. Meet people. That's the other one. Gen Z is not meeting people enough. We need to meet each other and create good, lasting relationships. And create families. Have babies. We all need to have a lot of kids. We need to help blow up the population of the USA. We need to help increase it because otherwise we've got a stagnant and declining birth rate that's going to just destroy civilization in only a handful of generations.
life. Because that anxiety that we all feel, that I'm sure many of you feel on a daily basis, that is a bug, not a feature of who you actually are. So take responsibility. Because while yes, there are systems that fail Gen Z, unfortunately, no one is coming to save you. And that could either cripple you or it could empower you to completely change your life for the better. And I hope you choose the latter. So build real life skills, challenge yourself, push yourself out of your comfort zone, learn to handle conflict and not feel like a victim 24/7, and understand that at the end of the day, unfortunately, this is not a comfortable fact, but that the world does not owe you or anyone else a sense of purpose. That is on you to find and create. And I hope you do. And the first step, again, is rejecting all of this and, for the love of God, logging offline. If you made it all the way to the end of this episode, thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun putting it together, and I hope that you enjoyed it too.
Thank you for putting it together, Brett. We all did enjoy it. Everybody go subscribe to Brett if you're not already. Subscribe to me, smack our like buttons, and get on out of here. Because I just yapped again, turning a 21-minute video into a 51-minute video.